the Walmart is a great witnessing place. It's not only a great saving place for money, it's a saving place for lost souls. So this map behind you, behind me, represents obviously our country. And there's a lot of lines and all that stuff. I have done 15 trips across the country.
Wow.
And there's crosses where we know people got saved. And every night I schedule these trips and we sleep in the Sunday school rooms of churches.
Yeah.
So we've done 43 mission trips. So after the layoff and after the first trip across America and after God hearing my prayer in Romans 1:16, and I still had 48 days from the time I prayed that prayer in Arizona, Lord, if you'll speak through me, I will share my faith. Out of the 60 people that were on that trip, I had the blessing of seeing 5 of them come to know the Lord during that trip. I don't know how many seeds I planted along the way, but every person that asked me who I am, I said, well, my name's Judy. I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia, but I'm really a child of God. I love the Lord. Do you know what Jesus did for you on the cross? And that quickly, I turned conversations around. And so at the end of that trip, the headquarters for that organization was in New Hampshire. We had a staff meeting and the boss said, Judy, after our meeting, I need to see you for a minute. And he said, well, I want to thank you. I brought in 30% more revenue for that group than they'd ever had before the years previous. He says, you did an amazing job. I got them on the radios and TVs and did all that marketing stuff. And he said, but I noticed along the way, you started talking to more people about Jesus and God and this and that. He says, don't get me wrong. He says, I was actually raised the son of a Methodist pastor. I said, that's great, John. I'm glad to hear that. I said, but tell me, do you know what Jesus did for you? Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he never answered my question. He just said, that's what I'm talking about. You can't be talking to people about that, your faith and all that on these trips. We're not a Christian organization. I know you come from Liberty. I think I understand what you believe, but that's not allowed here. And at that point was a crossroad. Now, I'd been laid off from Liberty a year and a half earlier. And I thought I was going to be the dean. The guy was putting in all the paperwork, my assistant dean. I expected when he called me in the office that Friday that I was going to be the dean. And instead I got laid off. So this guy calls me in, tells me how much I'm doing. They were paying me peanuts. I thought he's going to give me a raise. And then at that point I had a choice. And it's not life made up of choices. At that point, I said to John, John, God showed me an amazing thing on this trip. It wasn't about just bicycling. Yes, I fulfilled my dream since I was 15 and I was 41 my first trip. And I said, but you know what? I said, God showed me the real purpose of life. And for me, it's to talk to everybody I can. We've all been created by God. He loves us. Jesus died for us. He set us free. Amen. And God showed me and taught me how to have compassion for lost people and to listen to them and then to let the Holy Spirit give me the words to share. Awesome. And it's been amazing. I resigned, gave them like 2 weeks notice. And from that day on, it's so interesting because when I got single mom at 24, my ex-husband left us with no child support. I was on food stamps and welfare. Wow. I hate to ever admit that. I thank the Lord for what he taught me through that. Yeah. But I worked hard to supply the needs for my son, my education, the jobs God provided. Berean was amazing for both me and Steve. Steve went through Walnut Creek Christian Academy and he did his freshman year at Berean before we moved. So Berean has a special heart. And I want to encourage all the students, do your best, whether it's sports or any academic, whatever God's given you to do. But remember that there's people that you're next to in the grocery store, the bank, even today with masks on. I've led several people to the Lord in Home Depot, everybody's getting their stuff to do projects and riding my bike wherever. But anyway, so I resigned. I drove back to Lynchburg. I sold the house, before I did this trip across America. I bought myself a little motorhome. Chose my friends by the size of their driveways, because I didn't have money to live in an RV park. And for the first 5 years of starting Wheel Power, and when I was driving home from New Hampshire to Vermont, or from New Hampshire to Virginia, I said, Lord, what if I took a whole group of Christians across the country? I was one little Christian in a group of 60 people. What if I could do that and train Christians how to share their faith, or maybe they already all know and they love the Lord and they love bicycling. What could we do to make an impact in our country?
Yeah.
And now, almost 30 years later, it has been amazing. Just amazing.
How many trips did you say? 15 trips
I've
across
done
the
15
country?
across America.
And
Yep.
it sounds like you went north and south a couple times too.
I've done, yeah, I've done actually from the state of Washington, from Vancouver all the way down to San Diego.
Mhm.
And I've done several in California. And on the East Coast, we've done Maine to Florida several times. And then
Wow.
way down in Florida, I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, we do loops around Florida in the winter. You know, we do get snow in Virginia, not anything like Maine where I was raised, but
Right.
and then all these other trips that we've done. This is 43. I think it's 43 now, 43 mission trips on bicycles.
Okay, so tell us what's a typical day of riding your bicycle across the country as an evangelist for Jesus Christ?
Okay. Well, usually we have about 25 or 30 people. The average age of our team is usually 40. So we get up in the morning, usually between 6 and 6:30. We have a self-serving breakfast. We're in the churches, of course. So we make up our beds, our air beds. We load everything on our trailer. And we come and have kind of a short devotional time. We have small groups. We do the prayer brother sister thing. In the evenings when we don't have programs, then we'll do more of a devotional type thing. But we'll be on the road. It depends on the heat. If it's going to be, really above 80, we like to be on the road by 7. So we're usually up at 5. So it does fluctuate depending on where we are in the country. But we're on the road. There is no, I shouldn't say there's no time limit. They have to be in the church by 4, because usually the church, we have to do showers and people take us home most of the time. Some churches have showers now. We stayed in a few schools. That's been good. But most of the time, like we'll either go to people's homes for showers. So all these little logistics I take care of ahead of time.
Mhm.
So they're all set up for every town. And then we'll have dinner with the church. They'll do a big, fellowship dinner for us. And then in the evenings, we'll do a program. I play the guitar, I write music, and I even juggle. I do all kinds of stuff just to kind of bring the gospel in kind of some basic ways. But I also write some drama skits. And so the team will do this drama presentation to get people to see themselves in situations of how do you start a conversation. And so I was hoping we were going to be able to do that at Berean when I was there. And hopefully I'll be back.
Hoops with you too. I was going to challenge you to free throws, but
Oh,
I'm
free throws.
afraid you would win. I know you would.
Did I tell you my senior year at Cal Baptist, I shot 92%.
Yeah, that's what you said.
So yeah, and I still shoot. I shot in the state games of Virginia State Games, the senior state games, and a few years ago I was the only woman. I said, I'm not going to take a gold medal. I mean, keep it. I mean, I'm not about the medal. I just want to shoot and stay in shape and practice and stuff. So I said, just throw me in with the guys. And these guys are like, oh, sure, she can shoot with us. You get 20 shots, right?
Right.
And they said, these are all people over 55.
Mhm.
I don't know. I was whatever I was in my early 60s. So we all shot, and they said, well, you go first. I nailed them all.
Yeah, you did. Awesome.
So then I felt like, okay, give me the gold medal now, but whatever. But, I use those opportunities to share the gospel with people. And, that's what's been exciting about that. And there's so many stories. And do you want me to tell the story about what happened in San Francisco?
No, I think it would be great. I heard this story because it's familiar. I think we all know when you go down to Fisherman's Wharf, Pier 39, like there's those guys. Those guys that are playing tricks on people. So tell us about your experience.
Yeah. The street people of San Francisco. So our team, when we start west, I take them across the Golden Gate Bridge. That's so fun to bicycle. And then we go down and have our little, clam chowder bowls or whatever. And this one year, everybody was talking to us. Of course, they always do. We're all in bright yellow. We have stars and stripes all over our uniforms. And so there was a guy sitting there, and I heard somebody kind of like scream or whatever. And I looked up, and there's a guy sitting there, dark green jacket and a hat on. He was sitting on a little crate, and he's holding 2 big bushes, and he's hiding behind the bushes.
I've seen that guy.
and he'd shake the bushes and people would jump and scream and whatever. So
Yeah.
I prayed for him. I looked at him. I watched him for a few minutes, and I walked over and I said, I just got to talk to him. And so I told the team, hey, just stay here and keep talking to everybody. And I went over and I said to him, hey, this is pretty clever. I said, where'd you get this idea? Other than making money, his bucket was overflowing. So I carry this, I live by faith, by the way. I started to tell you, I haven't taken a salary in 30 years. When I resigned from that job, I said, Lord, you take care of me. I'm going to live for you. And that's how I live. I don't raise support either. I just totally live by faith. So anyway, so the bushman had his little cup overflowing and stuff. And I said, other than the financial thing here, how did you come up with this idea? And he said, do you ever look at people? I said, I look at people all the time. And he said, they don't look happy. He said, I'm trying to bring a little joy into people's lives. So that's good. And he looked up and he spotted the 25 of us in our neon yellow shirts. And he says, what in the world are you doing? Now we got helmets and the lycra shorts and the jerseys. And I'm standing there before him holding my bicycle, and I said, well, we're trying to bring joy into people's lives too, but not just for today, for all eternity. Tell me, what do you believe about Jesus? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, I think I said, what do you believe about God? I think is what I did. Yeah. I said, do you believe there's a God? That was the first question. Do you believe there's a God? And he says, oh, there's got to be. It was a beautiful day. It was a spring day in late April. He says, there's got to be a God. And then I held up the cross and said, do you know what Jesus did for you? Mm-hmm. And he was so funny. We'd only chatted a few minutes, but he looked at me and he said, I don't really know, but I bet you're going to tell me.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that was cool. And I said, well, if you'll allow me to, I would like to tell you. And he said, go ahead, I'll listen. And I did. And I squatted down. I leaned my bike against the fence. I squatted down, got eyeball to eyeball with him. He took his bushes and he put them in one hand. And he said, as I shared the gospel, what Jesus did for him, we're all sinners and saved, with the whole message of salvation with him. And I looked at him, I said, David, if you died today, what do you think happens? Where do you go? Where will you be tomorrow? And he said, well, I don't know. I really don't know. He said, I know I've sinned. I know I've done things wrong, but I just don't think I could ever be forgiven. Mm. And as I shared more with him and we talked a little bit, and he says, can anybody know for sure? I think that was his question. Or does everybody make up their own little way and follow it? Can anybody really know for sure? And then he kind of half smiled, still holding his bushes. And he says, I bet you know that answer too. Yeah. So I gave him the scriptures. God's word will not return void. And so he took those bushes and he dropped them. And he said, I want what you have. Mm-hmm. And as he came to know the Lord, and I prayed with him, he prayed, he asked the Lord to forgive him. It was so exciting. He reached over and he took his sign. He said, Judy, I wish I could give you something. I said, I don't need anything. I've been so blessed. But he gave me this sign. This was 2002, it was a long time ago.
He is famous.
What caught my attention was this, 22 years. And wow. I said, David, have you really been here shaking bushes for 22 years? And this was 18 years ago. He said, yes, I have. And I said, well, good for you. I said, has anybody ever told you about Jesus? And he said, no. He said, there was a couple of Jehovah people once, but his most amazing statement was this. He said, I always knew that one day I'd hear the truth and then I'd know how to respond. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
He heard the truth. He came to know the Lord.
And he responded. Yeah.
And he responded. It was just so amazing. So, I gave him hugs. I've kept in touch with him for years. He's retired. The original one has retired. I don't know if there's still somebody doing it. But let me just finish the rest of the story because there is another part to that story that's not on the video on our website because I didn't know it at the time that was recorded at Thomas Road Baptist Church. Okay, my testimony, Can We Pedal Our Way to Heaven, was originally published by the American Track Society. Mm-hmm. We self-publish it now. It's the only really bicycle story of salvation in the world. Mm-hmm. So in all these years, you would be amazed at the stories I get from people that write to me because our address is on the back or our website or my email, and people would send me their stories. I even got a collect call one time from a boy who was 13 in Connecticut, way back in the day when collect calls were there, and he just said, hey, somebody just gave me this book of yours, this little thing of yours. Can we pedal our way to heaven? I'm calling to tell you I can. I am the best bicyclist in all of New England. And I said, no, his name was Christopher. I said, Christopher, read the story. It's not about the bicycle. It's about Jesus Christ. And he says, well, I can ride there. Wherever it is, I can do it. I said, well, I'm glad you're such a good cyclist, but please read the story.
Yeah.
15 minutes, and he just hung up on me. There was never a goodbye or anything, just hung up. Okay, 15 minutes went by. The phone rang again, collect call from Christopher. I'm like, okay. He says, all right, well, I kind of read your story, but I got to the back and it says you're a world record holder. Tell me what your world record is. Well, I did set a Guinness World Book record in 1991. I rode the most amount of miles in the shortest amount of time on a stationary bicycle. I rode 3,000 miles in 7 days, 8.5 hours by riding 22 hours a day. And so it's retired now. You can't even find it in Guinness because there's too many stationary bikes. But anyway, this little boy wanted to know what my record was so he could break my record.
Yeah.
I said, read the story, read the story. Well, anyway, so I get all these letters from around the country. Well, one day, a couple of years after this, after the Bushman thing, I got a letter from this man in prison, and it was in Texas. And he said, dear Sister Judy, I just heard about your ministry. So excited to know that you're out spreading the gospel. He said, my name's Larry. I've been in prison for 11 years. He said, I got saved 10 years ago. And he said, through a prison ministry. And he says, I'm here. I may be here for the rest of my life, and I deserve to be here. That's all he said. He said, I'm writing to you for a couple of reasons. Number one, he said, I really felt years ago, about 5 years ago, that I needed to do in-house Bible studies here in the prison, because some of these men will get out. And so I went to the warden, asked the warden if he would allow me to do it. It took several years. They finally have granted me to do a Bible study with the men in prison. And they even gave us a room in the last year or so. So he said, we have a pretty nice room. We've got Bibles and Christian books, and we can meet in there, whatever, a couple times a week. And he said, God told me that the most important thing we could do here is to pray, to make sure these men know Jesus, but then to pray for our unsaved one. He said, we put up a whiteboard, and on the whiteboard, we started writing the names of all of our loved ones. And when we got the news that somebody came to know Jesus, we didn't erase their name. We circled their names so that we could see what God was doing. Yeah. I thought, man, that is really cool. So he's writing this in a letter to me. He said, so continue to pray. I mean, he had lots of time. It's like a 4-page letter. Finally, at the end of the letter, he says, probably the main reason I'm writing to you is to thank you, thank you for being faithful to what God's called you to do, to spread the gospel here in the United States. And he said, I recently heard from my brother that you had met him and that you shared with him when you all were bicycling, and he has come to know the Lord. And so we've been able to circle his name. And he said, I can't thank you enough because my brother was a bushman.
Wow. What a good story.
Isn't that amazing? So the brother had been praying for him for 10 years.
And that was him.
In Texas, the Bushman's in San
Francisco. You're the one.
And I'm from Lynchburg, Virginia. Only God could do that.
Oh, what a great story, Judy. And I know they were thankful, and I'm thankful to hear that too. And I know our students are thankful. Ladies and gentlemen, Judy Bowman, missionary, evangelist, world changer for Jesus Christ. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.